Tequila is everywhere, but understanding it is not. Baer and Maddie Jager launched the Tequila Report to bring focus, intention, and discernment to how tequila is covered and understood. Built for readers who value substance over hype, it's a member-driven platform grounded in transparency, thoughtful critique, and long-term perspective. This isn't about noise. It's about knowing what matters. On this episode of Tactical Tequila Podcast with your host, Matt Wilson. If you enjoy the show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it to your social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome back to Tactical Tequila Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wilson, and on today's show, I have a great show planned for you. We have the inside scoop on the Tequila Report with Jay and Maddie. The tequila conversation got loud long before it even became understood. The Tequila Report, founded by Jay and Maddie, exists to bring discipline, clarity, and accountability to how tequila is covered. This platform is grounded in clear standards, honest evaluation with the respect of the craft behind every bottle. Here you'll find real stories behind established brands, practical insight into what labels actually reveal, reader-driven reviews that value precision over praise. This is the Rolling Stone of tequila. Jay, Maddie, thank you for being on the show and welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Great to see you as always.
Likewise, diving into things, as far as starting in the inception, the launch, what factors came together that made you guys decide to launch the Tequila Report at this moment rather than waiting?
Well, it was more about just launching it in general. Obviously, we've made a lot of content about tequila over the last 3.5, almost 4 years now, which is crazy. But our observation was that there's a lot of short form content, especially on Instagram, about tequila. There's not as much longer form content. There are some podcasts like this excellent show. There are some folks doing YouTube videos, but the one area where there really isn't very much tequila content being created is in the written form. I am a writer by trade. I've written 7 business books. I've written 1,500 blog posts, etc. So I'm a writer first and foremost, much more so than I am a video content creator. And so Maddie and I decided, instead of trying to be part of a sea of great content creators that are making 1-minute videos, what if we instead created an opportunity to tell deeper and richer stories about tequila and tequila brands in more of a writing first format that not only is a little bit differentiated from other content platforms, but also because it is also on a website, you can go back and find it. It's not like you can't go back and find a 1-minute Instagram video, but it's not really made for that, right? It's ephemeral content. So we wanted something that had a little bit more shelf life. So that's why we decided to do the Tequila Report.
Well, and I feel like it would probably be easier to find written content form than it would be to search thousands or even more videos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an SEO advantage, hopefully an AI advantage as well. I mean, the site's only been up for 5 days as we have this conversation, so it's still super early in terms of its suitability for purpose from a findability standpoint, and that obviously is a process anyway. But yeah, we wanted to create something that was truly a magazine, not just a 60-second announcement.
So what assumption about tequila media did you intentionally reject while building this publication?
I think honestly, initially we kind of thought, maybe there's enough coverage of this category already. There's so many tequila creators out there, and there's not need for something like this. But obviously there is. There's nothing like this out there that's done well. So we thought we might as well do it.
leading up to the launch on January 6th, what line did you agree between the both of you that you would never cross no matter the pressure from the outside?
Well, I would say not just for this project, but all the projects that Maddie and I work together on and have now for almost 6 years. We only have two rules. First rule is no assholes. So we don't work with people we don't like, period. And second is if it stops being fun for us, we stop doing it. So those are the lines we won't cross. Obviously, as journalists, and I would say we are trying to position ourselves more as journalists now than just content creators. There's certainly mindfulness on our part and the part of our reviews team about conflicts of interest and that sort of idea of keeping the editorial side and the advertising side separate. I'm not sure that's wholly possible in any form of media today, but we're doing the best we can. And obviously, if people are like, hey, we feel like you should course correct or do something different, we're easy to find.
And during the launch, what part has made you guys feel the most uncomfortable during this whole process?
Well, not even during the launch, just the whole idea. I mean, as Maddie pointed out, there really wasn't anything in the tequila category that was doing it this way. There are analogs, I think, in the wine business, in the bourbon business, and in other forms of spirits, etc. But when you're the first one to do it, and as you probably know, Matt, we've done this all in. Like we have a tremendous amount of time and money invested in this project, tremendous. That always carries with it a little bit of nervousness and uncertainty because like what if this sucks? Like what if nobody likes it?
Right.
What if nobody reads it? What if nobody cares? And again, we're 6 days into it, so I mean that may still be the case, but early reaction has been super positive on the part of consumers and brands for the most part. I've also in my career launched hundreds and hundreds of websites, including some larger media projects like this. And never, ever, ever do you launch it perfectly without criticism, without confusion. So there is, and will always be people for whom this is not their idealized form of tequila media, and that is okay. We are not going to get everybody. We don't want everybody. We just want to serve an audience as well as we can.
And so far in the first 5 days since the launch, how has the feedback been so far?
Really good. We've got so many people just sending DMs and in the contact us form on the site. Like we love it and it's great and it looks really great. Maddie did an amazing job on the design side. It's got sort of a vibe and I think it feels professional as it's supposed to, right? It's not supposed to be a hobby. It's supposed to be something that you can really sink your teeth into. So everybody feels like it's got value. So everybody, most people have told us they feel like that has value. Brands are super interested in it. We've had lots and lots of brand interest. Probably talk about that a little bit more. There are some people who have said, well, why you guys? Why this? Why and there is no answer to that. We are not positioning either Maddie and myself or even our reviews team as the only source of tequila knowledge or truth. I mean, that's insane. I mean, Maddie and I know a fair bit about tequila. I think that's obvious, hopefully, but we're not the number one experts in the world, nor do we purport to be. So if you're going to say, hey, only the people who are first, second, and third in the world at tequila knowledge are allowed to create journalism, I think that's a fairly restrictive point of view. But there are people for whom we don't have the appropriate qualifications, to which I say, well, then do it yourself. And nobody has.
So talking about the positive, more of the positive side, switching gears to the negative side of things, what outcome would you guys say that you feel like for this project that you missed the mark, and what would that outcome look like when success, not when, but if success were to not happen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as Jay mentioned, obviously we just launched like 5 days ago, so it's a little bit too early to tell. But fundamentally, it's an email newsletter with a website. So I guess if we had like a massive unsubscribe rate or people weren't opening the newsletter or clicking or whatever, that would be a big issue for us. But so far, we've sent several emails and we've had no evidence of that. So we're positive. We're hopeful.
Well, I just subscribed the other day, so
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I am an
Thank you.
insider.
Thank you.
My dad called me yesterday and told me he subscribed to be an insider. I
Yeah,
was like,
I
thank
saw
you
your
for the
dad's. I saw
support.
your dad's credit card charge come through. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
You mentioned a little bit about credibility and the naysayers talking about why you guys, but and you even mentioned a little bit from brands and other influencers throughout the industry. What reaction, mostly from the tequila industry, told you immediately that the platform has landed with weight in the first 5 days?
I think first, let me just say, in addition to the work we do with Tequila Report, Maddie and I do a tremendous amount of consulting for tequila brands. So we understand, I think, the business side perhaps more than most content creators and certainly people who are throwing out random comments on a Facebook group. Um, we understand that this is actually a triangle, right? It's tequila brands, it's tequila media, and it's tequila consumers. And we're trying to be in the middle of that triangle and serve all three audiences. There seems to be this belief amongst some people in the tequila community that somehow tequila brands trying to sell their tequila is somehow distasteful, right? That somehow just the romance of existing should be enough to sell the tequila. I think most people who are not on the business side do not understand two things. One, how incredibly small most craft tequila brands are, and two, how incredibly difficult the business is. And I guess 2.5 is structurally very few craft tequila brands are actually profitable on a month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter basis. Very few. So if we can help connect brands to an audience, we will absolutely do that as long as we are serving the audience. And I guess Maddie can probably talk about where we're at with brands so far.
Yeah. So far, we've had a lot of really great brand feedback. We have a lot of brands supporting the project, which is awesome in the sponsorship role. But we've had, I don't know how many brands reach out to us, Jay, but like, I don't know, probably 20 already wanting to be a part of it, which is awesome.
And we should say we have nothing to hide in that regard. If anybody is interested in who we're working with, just go to tequilareport.com/partners, and it has the entire list of everybody who is paying us, who has a partnership with us. So we are and we are very, very happy with the brands that are part of it, especially because everybody who we work with, we invite them. Like we're not here just with our hand out. We decide who we work with. We're fortunate that we have other business interests. We're not paying our rent based on Tequila Report revenue, so it gives us an opportunity to say no. And I'll tell you, anytime you're in a media business, the best thing you can have is the opportunity to say no.
Now, out of all of the responses, is there one that has surprised you the most since the launch?
I will say we were really surprised how many brands have been willing to sign on as partners before we even launched. I mean, fundamentally, we're basically sold out until 2027. And that was true before we even took the site live. So we knew, I shouldn't say we know, we suspected that what we were offering would be of interest to brands because we hope we're doing it the right way. But we didn't think we'd have that level of interest. So that was definitely a surprise. And it's great because it allows us to focus on other things.
And so after launch, has there been a brand or anyone that has reached out and more or less said, what does this mean for us?
I think there's people like Agave Matchmaker, for example, right? And we've heard people say, well, why are you doing this? Because Agave Matchmaker already does reviews or whatever, to which we say, well, Tequila Report is far more than reviews. Reviews is like 15% of the whole project. And we actually have a partnership with Agave Matchmaker to do data exchanges and things like that. So we don't view it as contradictory or competitive, and neither do they, frankly. Agave Matchmaker is a database. It is a definitive database. It will always be the definitive database. We have no desire to be a database. We are a magazine, right? In the same way that you can have a database like Vivino, which will give you every wine in the world and a score, and then you have Wine Spectator, which is a magazine about wine. It's the same relationship. So there's been other people who reached out, Matt, who said, well, how come I'm not one of the reviewers that you launched the site with? And I just want to be clear, that decision, the 12 people who we launched with as reviewers for the site, was not necessarily who are the 12 smartest people we know about tequila. It was 12 people that Maddie and I know personally, because especially in early days, you have to have a relationship, because we're kind of pinstriping a moving car here. Like, we have it sort of figured out, but we're making decisions every day. Like, oh, we didn't think about that. Do that this way. So you have to have people who are along for the ride, and it really helps to have a personal relationship. And two, people who already, in many cases, create content. And that's important because we know they can hit a deadline. There was a charge thrown out somewhere on the internet that we sort of created this influencers supergroup, and that was not the desire at all. By no means do we think that, quote unquote, influencers are the only ones who know about tequila. In fact, in some cases, quite the opposite. But the thing about influencers and content creators, including yourself, Matt, in this show, is that we know they can hit a deadline, and we're running a magazine here. This isn't a hobby. So if we say, hey, we need a review by Monday, I need somebody who will give it to me on Monday. And so that's one of the reasons why we picked the 12 people that we picked initially. And I will say we're definitely already considering adding more people to the reviews team. We're trying to digest the sandwich we've already bitten off, but we suspect that team will grow over time at some level.
How large would you want that team to grow?
Well, so the thesis is this, right? So we publish, we put in the email, right? So let me just say, Tequila Report's twice a month, right? So every other Tuesday is a new issue. When we say issue, that means the email newsletter goes out to the subscribers, and in that email is all the new articles. There are other pieces of content that go on the site in between those issues that may not be featured in the email per se, but they still exist and they're still accessible on the site. Today, as we have this conversation, the cadence is 12 new reviews a month featured in the email. So each email issue has 6 reviews and then 4 or 5 other feature articles. So because we have 12 reviewers, each reviewer owes us, quote unquote, 1 review a month. We're trying to not make it a heavy lift. Some of our reviewers love it, and so they review more than 1 a month, and we put that on the site. So the question for us is, how many individual reviews do we want to put in a single issue of the email? I don't think it would ever be more than 7 or 8, only because the email gets too long and we want to save room for the feature articles, which in some ways are even more important. So I think we would grow the team a little bit. And if we grew it more than that, the only way we'd make that happen is if reviewers created new reviews less often than monthly.
Well, and I think adding more than those six or 7 in one edition, I think, you're starting to lose the reader's attention span at that point too.
Exactly. In a magazine format, more is not more. Better is more, right? So again, if we publish so many reviews, then we do get agave matchmaker-ish, right? And that's not the direction we're headed. So one of the things that we talked about a lot, even already in this first week or so, is what are we going to review? And we have a few rules, right? So we won't review anything that's got fewer than 1,000 bottles created because it's too hard to find. We don't do a lot of single barrels and LTOs for that reason. We're trying to not review things that are so new and so nerdy that a regular tequila fan in Des Moines has no hope of ever hearing of it. We're actually going back and now filling in some of the larger brands. Like we've got a review on Patron Reposado coming out soon. We just put up a review on 818. We have a review on a couple other larger brands. Like, so, we don't want to be obviously we come from the craft tequila community and most of our sponsors are in that realm, but we don't want to be the additive free craft tequila report, right? We want to be the tequila report. And if we can get people who are new to tequila to understand the difference between large brand tequila and craft tequila, partially through the content we create, well, then that's a win for everybody.
Why was it important for the platform to ask the readers to commit rather than show up? And what does that commitment change about the conversation?
Well, they're not required to commit. I mean, the vast majority of content on Tequila Report is free and open to all. Subscription is free. The email newsletter is free. Most of it is free. We do have a paid insiders program that gives you access to all the reviews, including the archives, some other lists of tequilas, and our top 150 brand rankings, which is a pretty cool piece of content. It also gets you discounts on e-commerce purchases, discounts on tequila events, tickets, discounts on merchandise at our store and other stores, and a few other things to come. So we've also priced it what we think is really affordably. It's $89 right now for a year in charter membership, which is far less expensive than most kind of tequila clubs. And we think actually because you get 10% off your bottle purchases, far more lucrative for the member. So I think it's a misnomer to suggest that the audience has to commit. They don't have to commit at all. If they choose to commit and become an insider, we would love to have them. It also gives them access, first crack at single barrel projects or special batches that the Tequila Report does. We've got an incredible bottle coming out this week with Amala Jaguar. It's a combination American oak, French oak hybrid that Maddie and I picked out. It's awesome. That comes out soon. So insiders will have the first opportunity to purchase that soon. So we think it's a good offering. It is not the reason that we're doing this, but having it's pretty common in media, right, to have everything and then have sort of the more for the people who are super into it. And I don't know that it changes anything about the conversation. We don't anticipate having a lot of content that's just for insiders, other than some Zoom calls with master distillers and things like that. We just think it's nice to have a big group and then a smaller group that's really into it.
Before launch, how necessarily did you define what an insider is, more mentally than monetarily?
I don't know that we did, and maybe that's a bad name. Maybe we just should have called it subscriber, or but with subscribers, somebody who gets the newsletter, so we couldn't use subscriber. Subscriber is somebody who gets the newsletter in their inbox. So there's sort of three things, right? So there's a viewer, just somebody who can go to tequilareport.com right now and look at it. There's subscriber, which means the email comes to your inbox every 2 weeks. And then there's insider, which is the $89 a year that gives you access to the things I just mentioned. Is that the best taxonomy? I don't know. Maybe insider feels too insider. Maybe it's not the right word, but that's the word we picked. I don't know that we put a lot of stock in that term. But I guess I would say, what would we characterize as an insider before launch? It's maybe somebody who knows enough to be dangerous about tequila, maybe has visited a distillery or something along those lines. Somebody who's not just ordering a house margarita at the Mexican restaurant near their house.
Is there a behavior that from either subscriber or insiders that would tell you immediately that this publication is working?
Yeah. Honestly, just people interacting with both the email, they can reply to the emails and it comes to us, or the website, social media, and then ultimately people converting to insiders, would show that the platform is working. And then obviously talking about it out in the wild, which we've seen a lot already.
Now, my next question is kind of like I feel like a loaded question. What would you rather lose first, scale or trust?
Well, I'd rather lose neither, if that's a possibility. But we would always have had to pick. We would always lose scale, because you can rebuild scale. You can't rebuild trust, right? Trust is a fungible asset. Trust is like fruit on the counter. Once it rots, you can never revive it. It's not like a lizard's tail where you cut it off, it grows back. Scale, you can always change scale, right? I've been doing this for 30 years. We don't worry about scale. If you have trust, you will naturally scale.
In transparency, what unspoken message did you guys want brands to immediately understand once this went live?
A couple things. One, that we don't have an axe to grind. We're not coming at this as now there's a new media platform where we can push our point of view. We're not trying to do that. We also want brands to understand that ultimately the reason the tagline of Tequila Report is celebrate your spirit is that we're here to cheerlead for tequila and tequila brands and the tequila industry as a whole. That's not to say we won't be critical when it requires it, but we're not here to be a scold. And we also wanted brands to understand, I think they're coming to understand that while we may have a feature article about your brand, etc., we also have reviews, and those reviews are created by reviewers who have their name on it. So we really are trying to keep the reviews apparatus and the content apparatus as separate as we can keep them, so that brands don't expect a 98-point review just because they're a sponsor.
In talking a little bit about sponsors, and you mentioned it earlier in the show, but how do you draw the line between exposure and endorsement, or does that visibility ever imply approval?
Typically, I would say no, but in this case, I would say yes, because Maddie and I invited the brands to participate and have full veto power over participating brands. I think you can assume, or at least read between the lines, that if a brand is a partner and a sponsor of Tequila Report, we endorse that brand at some level. Now, that's not true of all media, of course, but I think in this case, it probably is true. And we don't make any apologies about that. That's why we're proud of our list. And if you go to /partners, you can see them all, and there's not a lot of eyebrow raisers there. That's for sure.
Going into my next question, what would you say that within the first week, what kind of brand attention tells you that something's off?
Honestly, we haven't seen any of that yet. We've had so many brands that have asked us to participate that we haven't seen a whole lot of negativity, especially from the brand side. Obviously, as Jay mentioned, there's been some consumer confusion and there's always going to be talk. But from brands, all we've seen is excitement so far.
I love that for you guys. Hopefully, none of that negativity from any brand ever comes, but there's always that possibility, I'm sure.
Well, you know what it's going to be, and we're already starting to get a little bit. It's, well, hey, how come you didn't call us before you sold out for the year? Which is a good problem to have from our perspective, but it's also a little bit awkward, right? Because what it means is that, they weren't in the first tier of brands that we approached about being part of this, and that makes them feel a little bit bad, and that makes us feel a little bit bad. And so, that's what we call a Class A problem, but it's still a problem.
Now, when it comes to that, do you think that it would create friction between the relationship that you have with that brand, since they weren't in on the first wave?
I don't know, Maddie, how would you answer that?
I mean, maybe slightly, but I don't think so. Also, it's not like we pitched this to 100 brands and we had 25 slots and, sorry you weren't in the first 100. Like, we really did not pitch it to very many more than what we sold. So, and we have some really, really close brand relationships that took up about 18 of those slots. So, I mean, it's really not a knock to anybody. We love a lot of brands and we're going to give them exposure as much as we can. In reviews, we have a lot more reviews than issues. So we're going to do as much as we can to help everybody out. But, we only have a certain number of slots and we can't please everybody.
Continuing on with that, what question do you hope that brands ask themselves after reading the first issues?
Let me just jump in there real quick before Maddie answers that. Just to clarify for the audience why we have a limited inventory. So as I mentioned, the newsletter comes out every other Tuesday. So there's 25, there's 26, but the first one had no sponsor. So it's 25 issues for the year. Our premise is that each issue has a sponsor, right? So it's not like a regular website where you go to the website, there's a million pops up, you got to close it. There's a video over here, and there's all this crap that everybody hates. No, we're not doing that because it doesn't serve the audience. Every issue has a sponsor. The next issue is sponsored by G4. Every issue has only one sponsor. And because of that, we only have 25 holes for the whole year. So we feel that's really important for the audience so that's not festooned by a bunch of crap and ads and BS. And it's important, we think, for the brands. Like, okay, this is your opportunity to tell your story, and we'll tell it with you and for you and all that. We just feel like it makes it much cleaner. And the reality is, could we have sold 50? Yes, we could have sold 50, but we didn't because we don't think it's a good customer experience. And your question about scale and trust is really important in that regard. People think that we're doing this as a cash grab, whatever. This is a business, but we also have a tremendous amount of investment in it. But by the same token, this is not a terribly lucrative business in comparison to other businesses that we already run. So hopefully people understand that we're in this for the right reasons, and we're making decisions that first and foremost are about the users, and second are about the brands.
Yeah. So to answer your question, what do we hope that brands start asking themselves? I think we want brands to come to us, honestly, as they have, and say, wow, what an amazing platform. How can I be featured here? What can I do to be featured on the Tequila Report? And how can we get our tequila reviewed there? And we hope that they find just as much, you know, they like it just as much as any consumer does. And I think we've seen that so far.
Awesome. Kind of moving into the culture, the next layer, and tequila clubs. Why are tequila clubs essential to where this platform is heading even this early?
Well, there's a tremendous number of excellent tequila and agave spirits clubs in the U.S. today. They do great work in the front lines. One of the things we're working on is a program with agave clubs where if their members become insiders at Tequila Report, we will rebate a portion of those fees to the club as a club fundraiser. We're putting the finishing touches on that approach now, and if anybody's interested, reach out. We think it's a nice opportunity for both sides. The reason we feel like agave clubs are important is that every single person who is in an agave club of any kind is the tequila guy for all of their friends, right? So every single one of those, if you've got 100 people in your club, each of those people is the tequila guy for 10 other people, right? So you might have 100, but you're really accessing 1,000. So we feel like if you can create more mouthpieces, more champions of the work that Tequila Report is doing through people who we know are obviously into the hobby because they've joined a club, we feel like it's a great way to spread the message.
You pretty much answered every question that I had for you there.
Good. I mean, we're actually working on a piece of content. It won't be in the next issue, but it might be in the one after that, which I believe is February 3rd, on sort of a directory of agave clubs in the U.S. and also interviews with some of the presidents and chapter leaders about what it's like to run an agave club, et cetera. So we're working on that for a future edition.
Well, I look forward to that edition.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Starting this media platform, and going back to transparency, credibility, and accountability, when all of those are optional, what future does the tequila inherit?
I don't think it's any different than the present. It's true in every industry. The overwhelming majority of decisions made in fashion, cosmetics, and other industries are made because of influencers, content creation, things along those lines. It's obviously already been a big deal in bourbon for many years, longer than it's been in tequila. We're not going to change the fundamental relationship of tequila brands, tequila industry, transparency and credibility. All we can do is keep our own counsel in terms of what's right and what's wrong. And that's the only promise we can make, but we do make that promise.
Now, is there anything barring celebrity or celebrity brands from weighing in on the Tequila Report?
No, in fact, Insolito is a partner of Tequila Report. They're co-owned by the country band Midland, so I guess they would be classified as a celebrity tequila. Breaking news: the guys at Dos Hombres, Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul, who famously have a mezcal brand, are rolling out a new tequila made at T-Tap alongside Cascanes. They are debuting the tequila this year. They're also a partner with Tequila Report. They see value in introducing this new tequila brand through Tequila Report, so we're excited to them. We're not anti-celebrities. We are anti-celebrities who don't give a shit about tequila.
I love that. And I'm sure, you have subscribers and insiders that, also share that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a difficult question, right? Because celebrity tequila is sometimes misguided. There's a lot of celebrities out there who are just like, hey, I'm just gonna put my name on a thing, and it's just a nice way to make a buck. And they haven't spent a lot of time in Mexico, if any. They don't understand production. They don't really appreciate the soul of the product or the people who make it, and that's sad. But that's a licensing deal, right? There's lots of licensing deals. Right? You can get, at the store near my house here in Mexico, you can get a Charlie Brown toothbrush, right? Is Charles Schultz, big in the toothbrush game? No. Rest in peace, right? It's a licensing deal. From a business standpoint, I totally get it. It's also, and I think it's a mistake to not acknowledge this, one of the reasons tequila has grown so fast in the United States is because of celebrity brands. It's memorable for consumers. It's easy for bartenders and retailers to tell that story. To suggest that tequila brands collectively haven't been assisted by the rise of celebrity tequila, I think, is a misreading of the facts. Also, I think it's way too short-sighted to suggest that all celebrity tequilas are bad and they should never be consumed. John Wolfe at Juan Lobo, country singer from Texas, terrific tequila made at 1414, really good guy, cares deeply about it. Sammy Hagar, right, at their brand. I mean, like, he's been doing it longer than any single celebrity, and he cares deeply about tequila and tequila industry all the way back to the original Cabo Wabo. So I think it's an easy soundbite to say all celebrity tequila is bad, but it's not a true soundbite. And this is the kind of nuance that we're trying to bring to the conversation at Tequila Report. It's easy to make a 45-second video that says, don't drink Clase Azul, drink Fortaleza. But you know what? Like, how about a little more depth and a little bit more thoughtfulness? That's what we're trying to do. And it's easier to do it in writing than it is in a video, which is one of the reasons why we chose to do this as a magazine as opposed to only Tequila Report YouTube, for example, or whatever.
Well, and I watched the live that you did with John Wolfe, and I thought that was such a great interview.
Thanks. That guy's great. He's awesome.
Yeah. I've been trying to get him on the show, and for whatever reason, schedules just aren't lining up. But, being a country singer with...
Well, there's a new album out. That's the thing, right? Yeah.
Should tequila media ever be neutral, or must it actually take a stance?
In between, no media is neutral. I was a journalism major initially. There is no such thing as neutral media. It's impossible, because you bring to every decision you make in your life your own biases and your own experiences, and that's just humanity. There is no such thing as neutrality. But by the same token, as I mentioned earlier, Maddie and I didn't set out to do this to say, hey, how we can make this point about tequila is by having a magazine. That's not what we're here for. Again, that's why the tagline is Celebrate Your Spirit, because we're trying to cheerlead for everybody. Again, we have our own preferences and our own biases, and that will probably show up in our coverage. But we didn't do this as a long con to prove something.
And I feel like you've touched on this a little bit already, but when people look back at this launch moment, what do you hope that they understand about the choices that you both have made?
I think something that we're passionate about is like, yes, this is a for-profit endeavor. It's a business. And it's a business that we spent a lot of time and money to create. So like we had acknowledged that there is a profit component in this. And we've gotten some criticism for that. But we started this project because we love tequila and we love the community, and we think that this is a way to help the community. And we make choices based on that. So we have, as Jay mentioned before, like we have other businesses that are more financially successful than this probably will ever be. So hopefully people will realize that like we're in this for the right reason. We're not just in it to make a buck.
So you both said early on that you do a lot of consulting for various brands. Maddie, I want to pose these questions to you. When brands come to you for consulting, what's the first uncomfortable truth that you usually have to deliver to the brand?
Honestly, that it's a lot harder to differentiate than they think. Um, they think, well, first of all, they think that being additive free is like this massive differentiator, which it is, but there's also now no really source to truth for that. Um, Another thing is a lot of brands want to be everywhere all at once. And we have to be like, no, you really need to be in fewer states and focus on those states and put your dollars towards those states instead of spreading yourself way too thin, trying to be in every state all at once. Cause that's, you know, just not going to work in most cases.
Well, and I think more with these craft brands, since they're so small with production, at what point are they trying to become a Fortaleza, which, is
Yeah.
scarce because they don't produce a whole lot, but the amount that they do is extreme quality. And I think that you start to lose a lot of that quality once you start to try and mass produce into every state.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a lot of these brands, like you also just don't have the money to actually be in every state and support, people there. Like you need salespeople. If people see your tequila and yeah, it's going to bring in a lot of money at first when you first sell it to the liquor store, but then it's going to sit there for a year because you don't have anybody tasting it. So I think brands just don't quite understand that. Now, some have a larger budget than others and they're able to do that. But a lot of these craft brands just don't. And so, yeah, I think that them actually taking that into consideration, it's a hard truth to hear, but um, yeah, that's something that we have to tell people all the time.
So, to caveat off of that, what would be ideal for a brand that's either just starting out or within the first, I'd say, 2 to 3 years of launch? How many states would you recommend that they start in?
Jay, what do you
That's a
think
good
about that?
I don't know if
It's
it's even the
different for
number of
everybody,
states.
and it's
Yeah, and I don't know if it's number of states, it's sort of number of markets, because Florida counts as like 4 states, right? Because Orlando, Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, operate as their own ecosystem. Texas the same way, right? Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio are like 4 states. California, maybe even more, right? You've got Orange County, LA, San Diego, mid-state, up north. That's 5 or 6. Each of those cities is as big as Kansas in terms of tequila sales, and actually in terms of actual volume, dramatically bigger. So it's not necessarily number of states, it's number of markets that you can support. What's interesting is that most brands start in their backyard, which makes sense because it's easier for them to make sales calls and kind of babysit it. And then they go adjacent to their backyard, and then they start to tackle one of the bigger tequila consuming states, right? So California, Texas, Florida, to some degree, New York, New Jersey, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada. And that can all work. But when they start to hopscotch like that, right? When you're like, okay, we were in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, in contiguous Midwest states, and now we're going to go to California or whatever. it gets really challenging, because then in order to go babysit and do account visits and all that, somebody's got to get on a plane, or you have to have paid sales staff in those markets, etc. So I don't know that it's such a number of places, but I think it's easier to keep the geography more compact initially, because it's just easier to have more face time with key accounts.
Where do you guys see the loyalty breakdown for tequila brands?
I would
Well,
say
if you think it's a
probably
breakdown,
like the disconnect probably happens. I mean, I think brands need to realize like it's not about branding first. Tequila is not built on the branding. Like it's built on production, transparency, and trust. And so when you don't have those things, like the liquid and the story and the behavior don't all align together, the market's eventually going to catch up.
Do you feel that the transparency piece has been more so part of the additive free movement than any other point in time in tequila?
definitely, because if unless you have a story to tell that transparency allows you to tell that's positive, why would you gravitate toward transparency? I mean, no one's going to like clamor to put diffuser on their label, right? I mean, no one's like, so it's the challenge, of course, is now CRT has said that they want to have fewer production claims in labeling, not just additive free, but other things as well, which is a little bit of a blow against transparency, and they have their reasons for that, and I understand some of them. Um, so it's challenging. I think Maddie said it really intelligently a moment ago, as always, because she's the smarter one of the two of us for sure. Is uh, you have to have a differentiator, and the differentiator used to be back in the day 100% agave, and then for a while maybe it was additive free, but now it's got to be something different. And what is it? And it's challenging for brands, even craft brands, to have a differentiator that they can own, or at least is small enough that it makes a difference in the mind of the consumers.
Now, Maddie, from your perspective, what narrative choices help tequila brands cut through the noise instead of blending into it?
Honestly, exactly what Jay just said. Like, what narrative can you actually own for your tequila versus a narrative that checks a box, like additive free or organic? Like, you have to have something that, if not unique to your brand, is almost unique to your brand, because I mean, how many additive free brands are out there now? Like, I don't know, Jay, you probably know the number better than me, but
150, 180, I mean, a
yeah,
bunch.
so that's not, I mean, yeah, it's a differentiator to some point, but you have to have something that's your brand specifically that you can own, that doesn't just check one of those boxes.
And
Well,
maybe that's agave source, maybe it's terroir, maybe it's wood, maybe it's master distiller, maybe it's production in some other way. Like one of the clients we work with is La Pulga. We did a really great single barrel project with them last fall, and they're an unusual brand in that they don't add any water to any of their expressions. They proof down through cryo chilling. They run the tequila through a really cold chiller, and it evaporates alcohols, which brings it from still strength down to whatever they proof it at. They're the only ones, or fundamentally the only ones, that do it that way, and that's a differentiator. That's a true differentiator. They don't add water. So brands have to find something like that they can talk about that is easy to understand and memorable.
and I actually did not realize that about that brand.
There you go. Our work here is done.
They haven't talked about it much yet, so
I want to throw some rapid fire questions at you guys. Looking ahead to the next 12 months, what decisions will determine whether the tequila brand endures or stalls?
I think marketing, like, does marketing actually create enough awareness and demand that people come into a store or a bar and ask for that tequila? Because a lot of brands spend a lot of money on marketing, so that's like a big question.
Yeah, I would say also, just as a practical consideration, it's what happens with the U.S. stock market in the next year. There's a lot of tequila brands that have a pretty significant investor pool who have written checks to keep the brand afloat. And if the U.S. equities basis goes down, it's been a pretty high flyer for the last 3 years. And so people are taking money off the table and putting into tequila brands or other alternative asset classes. If we see a pullback in equities, you're going to see investors who are in tequila brands get more nervous about their overall portfolio and be less eager to fund expansion. So I know those don't seem like they're similar, but in my estimation, as somebody who's done a lot of investing in startups, I think if we see a big pullback in the stock market, it's going to be bad news for tequila brands. Startup
Well, I think not only just the stock market, but crypto as well. I think
Yeah, for sure. Good point.
see a lot of that. What
Yeah, I
actually?
mean, the financial, I mean, like people understand how cash hungry this business is. Maddie
Mhm.
talked about it a little bit, right? If you're going to go make a batch, like let's say you're going to make a 5,000 bottle batch, which is a very small batch. Most of these distilleries don't work on credit, right? Or they maybe float you for a little bit, but they've got to sell this juice to somebody. And so if your cost per bottle, finished cost at the distillery is 10, which is in the ballpark, you got to float 50 grand just to have your tequila. Then you got to get it across the border, right? Then you've got to get it to the distributor, right? Then the distributor's got to get it to retail. And then after that, right, eventually you get paid. But you might have to front 50 grand or more, and you don't see that coming back for 60 or 90 days. So the cash flow side of the tequila business is terrible. It's a miserable business from a cash perspective. And that's why some of these brands are always like kind of like one after the other. And that's why a lot of brands start to rely on single barrels because they can sell them quickly and it helps their cash position.
What actually defines legacy in tequila today? Is it family history or how a brand shows up and what conditions get them through?
Well, I think the condition that gets you through is having deep enough pockets, frankly, to ride it out, um, to get structurally profitable, which is at least 5 years in most cases. Lalo and a couple other brands would defy that, but that's a exception that proves the rule kind of a situation. So you got to have deep enough pockets to kind of get to 5 years and get to enough points of distribution that you start to get a flywheel. Um, and so you have to have the money, you have to have good juice, you have to have a story, as we've talked about many times today, and you have to have pricing that is aggressive enough and available enough that more consumers can drink it rather than fewer, unless you're going to pursue strictly a luxury, hyper luxury, $80 to $120 a bottle positioning, which can work, but very, very few brands can make that happen. One of the only newer brands that can kind of make that work is Cascanes. Alta Canto is trying to achieve something similar, but that's a really unusual playbook. And so ultimately, we'll see. I mean, there's been a lot of tequila brands started in the last 5 years, like hundreds and hundreds. We'll see how many are around 2 more years from now. I think we're going to see a consolidation of current players. There's always new brands coming behind them for whatever reason, but I don't think everybody that we know and love is going to make it, and that's just a sobering reality.
What's the most dangerous lie in the tequila industry that keeps telling itself right now?
Jay and I talk about this all the time, that there's gonna be a lot of acquisitions. Like, a lot of people start a brand to sell the brand, but if you look, there really haven't been that many, like maybe 2 to 4. So the idea that the end of the rainbow is like an acquisition, prob maybe, but probably not. So you have to find a way to be at least revenue neutral, if not profitable month to month, which is really hard to do in the tequila industry. So I think that that's one of the biggest lies. And then another one is that the tequila boom's over, um, which it's not. Yes, overall it's at 0%, but craft is up 30%. So the narrative that the tequila isn't growing anymore is partially true, but not fully true.
Well, and I think the reason that we're seeing a slight dip in alcohol sales across the board, I've read several publications that have said that this generation now is going out a lot less. And, I was even recently on the Stanford campus not too long ago and just had overheard a conversation between some young people. And even the one gentleman was like, yeah, I'm not going out. I stopped drinking. I'm going to do it for like a year of not going out. And I'm like, wow, like, what are you doing social skill wise? Like, this is where, things happen. This is where companies are made, ideas are formed, over cocktails.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it's generational. As you mentioned, Gen Z does appear to be drinking less than other generations, although those numbers are starting to flatten out a little bit as they realize how good alcohol is for taking your pains away. You also have the rise of recreational cannabis in many parts of the country. Like at some level, that has to impact drinking, right? Um, and then I think the third leg of the stool is just expense. There's a lot of people in the United States that are financially challenged right now. Inflation is still up. Wages are down. Job growth is flat. And so it's like, okay, well, maybe I can buy one fewer bottles of tequila this month and use that for part of my electric bill. So there is some truth to all of that. But as Maddie said, most of that impacts the industry in total. If you look at craft tequila brands, they're typically up 30% year over year as a category, where tequila overall is flat.
When it comes to brands, what becomes the true measure of a tequila brand over time?
Well, I mean, survival is the true measure. But outside of that, I would say, do people recognize it and then purposely order it? Right? Do you see it on a shelf and say, oh, that's G4, and that's one I like, so I'm going to ask for that one, either in the store or the bar. To me, that's the magic formula, right? So marketing leads sales. You have to create recognition, and that recognition generates actual bottles off shelf or pours in a cocktail in a bar setting. But that's where you have to get to. You got to get to that point where people recognize the bottle and then they ask for it by name. Until you get there, it's a challenge.
Well, Jay, Maddie, where can everyone find you on social media?
Well, you can find the site at tequilareport.com. If you want to get the newsletter in your inbox every 2 weeks for free, go to tequilareport.com/subscribe. If you do that, we'll also tell you about the insiders opportunity that we talked about earlier. You can always find us on Instagram at the Tequila Report.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time and thank you for being on the show. Everyone, thank you and have a great day.
Thanks so much, Mike.